What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today I'm doing an Infernoid deck profile. So I'm really excited to see you guys because this deck is a really awesome deck that makes great use of one of the coolest field spells ever created, Lair of Darkness. I've changed up this deck a lot since the last time I profiled it, so I'm really excited to show you guys all the changes I've made to this deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Infernoid Anunku. This card is a great boss monster for the deck that has the ability that it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Infernoid monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total level and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower and cannot be summoned by other ways, which is a really awesome effect that basically they revolve around having ranks and levels of 8 and lower on your side of the field. All of your Infernoid monsters share that ability besides your copy of Decatron. It also has the ability that when this card is special summoned, you can destroy all other monsters on the field, and once per turn during either player's turn, when a spell or trap card or effect is activated, you can treat a monster and negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card, which is why Lair of Darkness works so well in this deck, is because of a lot of your Infernoid monsters have effects to tribute monsters. We then play 2 copies of Infernoid Deviati. This card is a really good boss monster as well, but you really need 2 and 2 of these cards. This card has the exact same effect as Anunku, where you have to banish 3 Infernoid monsters to summon this card, but it also has a really unique effect that when this card is special summoned, you can destroy all spells and traps on the field except void cards, and then once per turn during either player's turn, when another monster effect is activated, you can tribute a monster, negate the activation, and if you do, banish it, which again works really well with Lair of Darkness. We then play a single copy of the level 8 Infernoid. This card is a really good one as well. This one you only have to banish 2 Infernoid monsters to summon, but it has the ability that when this card destroys an opponent's monster at battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can activate this effect that this card can make a second attack in a row, and then once per turn during either player's turn, you can tribute a monster and then target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. We then play 2 copies of the level 7 Infernoid. This card is a really good 2-of in the deck because it has a super powerful effect. It does require 2 Infernoid monsters to banish to summon this card, but it has the ability that if this card attacks an opponent's monster, the effect can be activated at the end of the battle phase to banish 1 card on each or from the field, which is a really good effect to be able to just banish any card on the field. And once per turn during either player's turn, you can tribute a monster and then target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it as well, just like the level 8. We then play a single copy of Sajet. Sajet is super good in the deck because it helps out with your trap card Void Feast because it's a level 6 Infernoid monster. This one also requires 2 to summon it, to banish to summon this card, but this one has a super unique effect that when this card declares an attack, you can banish 1 monster from your opponent's extra deck, their choice, and once per turn, during either player's turn, you can tribute a monster and then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, which again is a super powerful effect to be able to banish any card from your opponent's graveyard. I really like that effect on these Infernoid monsters. We then play a single copy of Patrulia. Patrulia is kind of an MST. You only have to banish 1 Infernoid to summon it because it's one of the lower level Infernoid monsters, but it's a really good card because it has the ability that you can once per turn target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it, but this card can't attack during the turn you activate this effect. And it also has the ability once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can tribute 1 monster and then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, and it is a quick effect, which is really awesome. We then play a single copy of Harmonic. Harmonic can pop a monster once per turn, but it cannot attack, and it also shares that ability that you contribute a monster and then banish a card from your opponent's graveyard during their turn. We then play a single copy of Antera. Antera is kind of a compulse, which is kind of a cool card effect for this card. It has the ability that once per turn, you can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls and return it to the hand, and then once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can tribute a monster and then target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, and it's a quick effect as well, which again is really, really good. So pretty much from the level 8 all the way down to the level 2, you have that ability that you can tribute a monster and then banish a card from your opponent's graveyard, which is really, really awesome. I also really like that basically these two pop monsters and spells, and then this one is a bounce, which is really, really helpful for the deck. We then play, in my opinion, the most powerful of all of the Infernoid monsters, and that's 3 copies of Decatron. Decatron is the only one that can actually be normal summon. It has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, you can send an Infernoid monster from your deck to the graveyard, except an Infernoid Decatron, and if you do, increase this card's level by the level of the sent monster, and if you do, this card copies the name of that monster and replaces its effect with that monster's effect as well, which is really good because usually you're going to summon out 2 copies of this and a Sajet off your copy of Void Feast, which is a really, really powerful combo for the deck, and then send a copy of Deviati and a Nunku to the graveyard so you have that monster and spell negate, which is just super, super powerful while getting your boss monsters into the graveyard to summon them later on, which is just really, really nice for this deck. We then play a Dogmatica package in this deck as well, which is going to be 3 copies of Ecclesia. Ecclesia is just super powerful in this deck. We don't summon all that much from the extra deck, so this card comes in very, very handy because it has the ability that if a monster is on the field that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can special summon this card to your side of the field, and if this card is normal or special summon, you can activate this effect to add a Dogmatic card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself, and also you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, and this card cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summon from the extra deck, which is a really powerful effect. I love this card in this deck, and it just helps out so much with the Dogmatica package. We're then playing a single copy of Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis is usually what you're going to be searching off your copy of Ecclesia, and it has a really good effect that during the main phase, if a monster special from the extra deck is on the field, a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then if you control another Dogmatica monster, you can negate the effect of one face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn, which is just a really, really powerful effect to be able to just negate a monster effect while also giving us an additional boss monster. We then play 2 copies of Lava Golem. Lava Golem is a really, really good card in this deck because Lava Golem lets us tribute our opponent's monsters, and it just gets out, it basically can out any monster in the game like Dragoon or anything like that to be able to just tribute over 2 monsters your opponent controls. It's just really nice. They will get the Lava Golem, but with cards like Antra and Hermatic, you can just basically pop it off the field anyway, so this card is a great Kaiju-ish monster to be able to deal with your opponent's monsters while also doing 1,000 points of burn damage to your opponent during each of their standby phases. And it gives us tokens for Lair of Darkness when we tribute our opponent's monsters, which is really awesome. We then play just a single copy of Effect Veiler. This is so we can use it with Selene to be able to basically bring it back to our side of the field, which is just really, really nice to be able to go into a copy of Access Code Talker. This card is really, really good in the deck to basically go into Needle Fiber and then bring this card out with the Needle Fiber and then link into a copy of Selene. And if you have 3 spells on the field or in the graveyard, you can then go into Access Code Talker, which is an awesome combo for the deck. So I do play 1 copy of Effect Veiler. We then play 3 copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma. This is to protect our plays because a lot of times we're not going to have a monster on the field when we're trying to activate Void Feast or Void Vanishment, which is really, really important to be able to get those plays through. So you can use Gamma in the deck to be able to basically stop your opponent from hand trapping you as you're trying to go through your plays. And then we play a single copy of Driver as well to go along with the Gamma to be able to special summon to our side of the field when we summon out the Gamma to protect us from monster effects. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of a 1-for-1 so we can special summon out our copies of Decatron super easy from the deck because it is a level 1 monster. 1 copy of Reasoning. Reasoning is really, really good in this deck, especially since none of our Infernoid monsters can be special summoned besides Decatron. So you have just a few targets in the deck with copies of your hand traps, lava golems, and stuff like that are monsters that are in the deck that are not the Infernoid monsters, but normally you're just going to be able to activate this card, and your opponent's going to call like 4 if they don't know what they're playing against, and you're just going to be able to special summon out a monster off this card's effect if you hit your copies of Decatron, which is always nice, but you're always going to usually mill cards to the graveyard to feed your Infernoid monsters. We then play a single copy of Monster Gate, kind of the same thing as Reasoning. You tribute a monster and you flip cards off the top of your deck until you hit a monster that can be normal summoned or set, and you special summon that monster, send any other cards to the graveyard, which this card comes in very, very, very handy with our copies of Decatron Decatron and being able to send our Infernoids to the graveyard so we can special summon out some of our boss monsters. We play 2 copies of Nadir because we do play a Dogmatica package. This card is really, really good in the deck because it lets us send a monster from our extra deck to the graveyard and then add a Dogmatica monster or a Fall of Albaz monster from our deck or graveyard to our hand that has less attack points or equal to the sent monster to the graveyard. It does lock us out of the extra deck for the rest of the turn, but it's still a really, really good card in this deck to be able to basically just get all those different plays, and it's just a super, super good card. We then play 3 copies of Lair of Darkness, which this card is just absolutely crazy in this deck. This card has the ability to all face-up monsters on the field become dark, and then once per turn, if you attribute a monster that you control to activate a card effect, you contribute a dark monster your opponent controls, which this card is going to make everything dark on the field, so you contribute your opponent's monsters for all of your card effects, which is just really, really good. It also has the ability that even if you don't control that monster, and then once per turn during the end phase, special summon as many tokens to your side of the field that are Fiend, Dark, level 3, 1000 attack, 1000 defense as possible to the turn player's field and defense solution, up to the number of monsters attributed this turn while this card was face up. So for example, if it is your turn when you have Lair of Darkness on the field and you use Lava Golem, and you tribute 2 of your opponent's monsters to be able to summon that Lava Golem at the end phase, it will get 2 tokens for Lair of Darkness, which is really, really handy. We then play 3 copies of Void Imagination. Void Imagination is kind of a neat card because it has the ability that Infernoid monsters you control whose original levels are 2 or higher become level 1, and all battle damage inflicted to your opponent is halved. This card is really neat because it does reduce the level of this card of all of your Infernoid monsters, so you can summon out multiple Infernoid monsters to your field because all of them share that ability that if the level and rank of monsters are higher than 8, then you can't summon any more Infernoid monsters besides Decatron. But this card is also a fusion spell because it has the ability that you can send this card to the graveyard to fusion summon an Infernoid fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion material. And if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck and you do not, you can also use up to 6 monsters from your deck as fusion material, which makes it super easy to go into our Infernoid fusion monster and to get all of the effects of that super powerful fusion monster. We then play 3 copies of Void Vanishment. Void Vanishment is a search card for the deck that lets us discard a card to add a void spell or trap from our deck to our hand, except another copy of itself, which is a really good effect for this card to be able to do because it just helps us out a lot to be able to get to our Void Feast or Void Imagination with this card. It also has the ability to Infernoid monster. As you control battles an opponent's monster, after damage calculation, you can send this card to the graveyard to banish both of those monsters, basically being able to out more monsters that your opponent controls, which is just super nice. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just playing 2 traps in this deck. We're playing a single copy of Dogmatica Punishment because it works with our Dogmatica package and lets us target a face-up monster your opponent controls and send a monster in the extra deck that has higher attack than that monster and destroy it, which is really, really good, especially with some of the cards that we're going to have in the extra deck to be able to send with this card's effect to get pops, additional pops on the field, and all sorts of really good effects. And then we play a single copy of Void Feast. I have gone back and forth with this card of playing 3 copies of this card or 1 copy of this card. You never really want to play 2 of it. I have considered playing 3, and in previous builds I have played 3, but with the Dogmatica package I ended up just playing a single copy of this card. It has the ability to send a void spell or trap from your hand or face your field to the graveyard to special summon up to 3 Infernoid monsters from the deck whose total level equal exactly 8 and ignoring their summoning conditions, which is always going to be your 2 copies of Decatron and a single copy of Sajet that you're going to be summoning off of this card unless you've already summoned out one of those monsters, in which case you'll go to the level 7 and a single copy of Decatron off this card's effect, which this card is just really, really good to be able to use in the deck and search off your copy of Void Vanishment. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the Infernoid fusion monster. This card is really, really good because depending on the amount of fusion materials you use to fusion summon this card depends on the effects that you get. If you use 3 or more, each player sends 3 cards from their extra deck to the graveyard. If you use 5 or more, each player sends the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. If you use 8 or more, each player returns 3 of their banished cards to the graveyard. If you use 10 or more, each player sends their entire hand to the graveyard. With this 3,400 attack point, crazy powerful powerful boss monster. This card is just super good in the deck, and it's just a really awesome card. We then play 2 copies of Elder Entity Nist, because we can send it to the graveyard, offer copies of Dogmatic Punishment and Nadir. So this card is a definite 2-of, because it turns your Dogmatic Punishment into a search and a pop, which is really cool, or your Dogmatic Punishment into a pop and an additional pop, which is really nice. We then play a single copy of Titaniclad, so we can get that additional search with our Dogmatica package. So this card is just really, really good. It just helps out a lot because during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can add to your hand or special summon a Fallen of Albaz or Dogmatica monster from your deck, which is just really, really good to get that search. We then play a single copy of the Chaos Ruler. This card is super good in this deck to be able to basically send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. This card is just overall fantastic in the build to be able to just get additional cards in the graveyard. Play a single copy of Psyframe Lord Omega. Omega is really powerful in this deck because being able to go into your copy of Omega using your Gear Gamma and your copy of Driver is just fantastic to be able to go into this card and rip a card out of the opponent's hand. We then play a single copy of Access Code Talker to be able to pop additional cards. You can play Boral Sword or Boral Load if you want to as an additional budget option for you guys, but this card comes in very, very handy in the deck, but you don't have to have it to be able to play the deck, so you can change it out for Boral Load or Boral Sword. We then play a single copy of Crusadia Equalmax. Equalmax is an insanely powerful card because if you special summon a Lava Golem to this zone by tributing 2 of your opponent's monsters, and then special summon out 2 more Infernoid monsters to the other zones, it will gain the attack of all of those monsters, which is really awesome. And this card just basically makes it for an OTK piece, which is really nice for the deck. Play a single copy of Selene because we can climb into access code using Effect Veiler and Needle Fiber. So this card is a really, really good one of in here and just helps out a lot to be able to go into those cards. We play a single copy of Hita, the Fire Charmer. Hita is really good because basically you can go into this card with your Infernoid monsters before you use Lair of Darkness because they're all fire monsters. We play a single copy of Lambda, so our copies of Gamma are always live, so we play a single copy of this card. 1 copy of Needle Fiber to be able to special summon the Effect Veiler to then climb into the copy of Selene, would then climb into the copy of Access Code Talker, which is just really, really nice in this deck to be able to climb into the Access Code Talker so easily. But again, you don't have to have this card. You can change it out for something else if you want to, like a copy of Nightmare Phoenix and Nightmare Unicorn for the copy of Needle Fiber and Selene. And you can change out the copy of Hita if you want to for a single copy of IP Masquerena if you want a little bit more of a budget option. We then play a single copy of Gravity Controller. Gravity Controller is really good because if you do summon out your copy of your Infernoid monster, or any monster that has a level from the extra deck, you can link it away for the copy of Gravity Controller to clear up the levels that you have on the field so you can start special summoning your Infernoids again, which is super, super helpful for the deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck. If you haven't tried Infernoids before, you definitely should. They're a really crazy, awesome deck to basically just special summon your monsters over and over and over again and just be able to get some pretty insane fields with some awesome looking boss monsters and even use the crazy powerful Lair of Darkness. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.